All right. Hey, Mike, can you hear us?
I can, thank you. I was a little worried there but I was like, no, they probably have it on mute. I can hear you just fine. Thank you.
Good.
Okay. So ready to start?
Yep.
Okay, calling meeting to order. Okay. Albany CSO Full Communities Corporation. Okay, we have President from Albany and myself on the frame. From Cahoes, we've got Dan and Gary, we've got Mr. Mansour, we've got Phil Smart. We've got Chris and Water Beliefs, Water Beliefs, Green Island. Gary's gonna do double duty. Nobody from West Lake County. We've got Tim Murphy from Oak Purification District. We've got Mark and from CDRPC. And on the Zoom, we've got Mike Miller from the Albany Joint Venture team. So I guess we're ready. We can go.
I edited the minutes in the early afternoon yesterday. So if you downloaded the packet before early afternoon, it might not reflect those edits. But these packets here printed should reflect the edits.
Yeah, I was saying in the minutes, I don't know if it's different than the packet, but in regard to project updates, it's section 8. There's the first sentence refers to phase 2A, which is actually actuated gate. And I guess what that should say is that almost completed control panels are what's needed to make it fully operational.
Oh, well.
And then the next paragraph, the next sentence, with regard to phase 2, it's conveyors and washer compactors are not working properly. The screens are working, but the conveyors and the washer compactors are just making a mess of the stuff. And
The conveyors and what?
washer compactors.
Washer compactors.
And so it's supposed to go to conveyors, the washer compactor, and then get into the dumpster. And instead stuff is just going all over the place. So I think then the operations has to go to rolling cards.
Yeah, pretty bad.
To handle the stuff.
I have a question just about how we do the minutes. Do you like this much detail in the minutes in the project update section? Or can we just say the community has discussed project updates?
If there's no action involved, we don't necessarily have to have that one. But I guess from the point of view of what still might be to be for completion, might be good. Might be good to have these short.
Okay, there's no problem.
The Mohawk Hudson Bike Trail is mentioned. I think in our long-term control plan, it's really referred to as Wade Street. Wade Street phase 3. Although I think it has nothing to do with Wade Street. I think that's a reference in regard to that, which is really SSS 12, I guess. And in regard to Van Buren Street, the completion is December 15th of 2024. So it's not really 2 years, but it's the completion is there. And then the only other thing is I don't think the DEC grant to water bleed is actually business of this board. So if that was just an informational thing. That's all that I found. Did anybody else have any comments on the minutes? If not, can I have a motion to accept the minutes? Modify?
Make a motion.
Second, Chris, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries. National report, Tom,
Okay, I think you all have a copy. Currently carrying about $291,000. We have receivables of 211, which I'm working on cleaning up. That's different types of grant money as well as some funds that we've advanced to all of it. So we've got to balance that out. So that number will change. We're at about 61.5% of total completed on the projects and 61% on the total corporation. We have about $500,000 in net due to counties, and the detail is there. Any questions?
any questions? None. Okay, then, the agenda, like the asterisk says, oh, there's board action, but I don't believe there's a board
You
action.
don't have.
No, that's correct.
Leave that up for the next time. Vendor invoice. I think we have, invoices and funny rates, the hose for Newcastle, for Mead Street, Albany, a bunch of Digester Castleman, or through the Creek and only for joint venture team. I think the Digester has a typo.
You mentioned that last time. Apologize.
I think there's. It's SARE, I think. So, any questions about invoices? These are mostly being approved, except for Castle, which is that Main Street project. Have a motion to pay the vendors invoices.
I'll make it second.
Okay. You get that? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Yes, you've seen the first ones and reconciliations. I guess we've been having bi-weekly Zoom meetings with WSC. From my point of view, we have our second tranche of financing. There are a bunch of different projects that still needed to be dispersible. Maybe we're going to make a note for some of these in the minutes. There's BMP 10, which is the outside community metering. Are we close with some of that paperwork, Chris? That's outside community metering.
Yeah, I think everything's been submitted, everything I have,
Do we see?
yeah. I've been back to the contractors multiple times, resubmit everything that's been submitted like 5 times.
So that we haven't had a disbursement against that. I guess we needed chapter 2 cost summaries and see once again what if you've had any disbursements and that we haven't had. The other one is SSS 07, which is Hoosick Street, which is Carver.
Yep.
Did that get all settled?
They were waiting for the AIS on rebar and they got that to them. And it goes into the black hole.
But sometimes we give that something you see and then they don't seem to make a note of it. Then
I'll have to wait on that.
SSS 08, which is 123rd and 124th Street. With Newcastle,
Yeah, we received money on that.
so we should be able to get what you got.
Yeah.
To that. SSS 10 is Columbia Street, phase 2. There's still some outstanding things, Gary, you have that regulation stuff. Or what?
We sent everything into EFC. And I just read this morning on one of my emails that Karen sent back the American Iron and Steel because Fort Miller did not have the SRF number on the certification. which they wouldn't.
So you wrote it on and sent it back?
So,
Initial next to it.
yeah. We're gonna. I'm gonna talk to Arcade as soon as I get back or so and see what we can do to get that back to EFC. So, other than that, I think Columbia Street Phase 2 is fine as far as I know.
Okay, well, when we have our next weekly meeting, we'll see if we can get all these cleared up. They had asked me for a drawdown schedule, a draw schedule for our tranche, because we have like $4 million and we drawn down, so we just, you know, pay Troy and Coase on these projects. If they can get dispersed. So, and then Fleet Street, in terms of being dispersible.
Yeah, I think, again, I think we're okay. We got the MWBE waiver. So, we had submitted a lot of stuff because they asked for a their documentation
All
form
that
months
all
ago.
that good faith that this stuff you went through.
So, well, this was on everything else. And we sent everything in. I don't even know if they looked at it though, because I haven't gotten any reply since we sent the stuff in. So,
That would be SSS 12.
yeah, but I know the big thing that they were concerned about was MWBE, and that we did get the sign off on. So as far as I know, we're all right, but who knows? I mean, I think EFC knows.
Okay, and in regard to engineering stuff, Chris, you were gonna work on getting CDM's stuff dispersible, was that getting close?
Yep, well, getting close, meaning it's been submitted.
So that's that's on all the different joint projects. And Arcadis for Columbia Street SLS 10. In terms of there being dispersal.
I think everything's okay. I haven't heard otherwise.
And then SSS 12 CHA for Fleet Street
Yeah, same thing.
should have all that. And then the other thing that Albany needs in regard to the financing that we need to do for Van Buren Street and for Little C and Manor Avenue is that sign off on that engineering certification. So I need to get that from you and from Chris for that project number, so.
Yeah, we haven't got. We finalized the list.
In the process.
Yeah, we finalized the list. And Arcadis is gonna be doing Little C. And I should be getting a contract from them shortly. And then CHA has got Manor Avenue. But we had only just sent them a letter just before I went on vacation, indicated that they got the project, that they are on the list for water wastewater projects. And from that list, they have that particular project that we would like to see a contract.
Yeah, well, can you take this form? I just wrote that project number of it for you. So I guess it needs to be the form needs to refer to our financing, so.
There's an engineering self-certification form.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I did that for Van Buren.
so that's already sent in. Okay. That's all I have in regard to EFC dispersions and reconciliations. Anything else to discuss on?
Beaver Creek. Where do we sit with their approvals and so yeah, invoices for $1.4 million, but only 900,000 is approved for reimbursement. Are we getting different invoices
Well,
that,
Rebecca Calvin had stuff that she put, I think, in a file in Procore, and we had given EFC access to her Procore files for Beaver Creek, but so she was gonna resend that to be able to get the rest of the.
so are we on hold until that gets approved? Are we doing a partial payment on what's reimbursable now? And then
We're getting a partial on that.
Okay, and you'll submit me the revised invoices. How do I need to pay on those?
So we'll get that the rest of that in the next disbursement.
Okay.
Just have a question about EFC's administrative process. So they don't correct typos on your submissions? Like you missed the SRF number on a form?
No, they send it back.
That's ridiculous.
There,
That's how I know like a bad agency versus a good agency. A good agency will say, you missed a couple things here. I fill it out for you. Just make sure it's good.
Even if they put an email, say, it made these corrections, they made this to this, just so you know, let me know if there's anything different.
Is that something that you think they would entertain?
no. Well, there was something new. Actually, there is one other thing in regard to disbursements and reconciliations. Actually, it has to do with closing. So we're still working on the closing of the first tranche of financing. And I get this request from Paul Johnson about a series of questions, and it's asking based on EDUs. Equivalent dwelling units, like what is Albany's equivalent dwelling units in our system? I said, well, Paul, we don't keep track of equivalent dwelling units. We've got a lot of residential, we got institutional, we got.
Yeah,
Oh,
we
it's-
adjusted to per capita.
So, but they're asking for this information like, okay, what's the number of EDUs, and then what's your current debt service, and what's your current operating costs? And what is this, what is this financing increasing your operational cost and your debt service? Now, what is your cost per EDU, your annual average cost per EDU? So I answered back, well, Paul, what I would propose is that I would take my average annual billed water usage divided by 200 gallons to come up with a number of EDUs, which I said was like 57,000. Is that okay? Is that?
So I spoke with Paul, and we had somebody else in the line, because we had to do it for a water line project. And for the next closing we're going into. And I said, the problem comes in of you're asking questions for the city of Troy, where the money's coming from EFC is dispersed through 8 other communities also. How do I account for their EDUs?
Yeah.
So they called me within 5 minutes of that email going back of what the heck. They said they're trying to coordinate a plan to make sure that median income is accounted for within their financing. So the communities that actually need the funding get the appropriate amount of funding, and those that don't really need it get less. And the only way they can calculate that is by doing this type of. So they're just starting it. They really don't know what they're doing. They said the engineers have been doing it for a while now. Not my engineers. We have a project, we move forward, here's the cost, we figure it out. We don't go back to what the cost is gonna be.
You might look at your rates.
Yeah, we adjust the rates accordingly, but if we have a project that needs to go, I need the project, the cost is the cost. We don't go back to, oh, that's not affordable for people. It's more of, we gotta find a way to do it.
Yeah, well, they also asked, do you have other projects that are going to impact? And of course, we've got about 8 other EFC financing that we're involved in. So anyway,
So they said
we're
it
gonna
doesn't
have to
need
do
to be-
this on each closing as we go along now.
It doesn't need to be down to the penny. It's not gonna be public information. It's just a tool that they use to try to calculate where things are going. Where the money's gonna go.
They may have a new expectation related to the disadvantaged communities.
Yeah.
Metric. And we're seeing that across the board in all of our state programs. So they're trying to fit that metric into programs where,
But if that calculation doesn't. It's not the same as how the rates are set, though. That's.
Well, and I think that's what I kind of told them yesterday, is our rates aren't set like that. But we don't use EDUs. We bill per we bill per gallon. We don't bill per unit. So
Right.
those communities that are unmetered, yes, that fits their structure. So we're metered, so we switched it rather than an EDU to a per capita.
That makes a lot more sense, particularly if you want to parse the disadvantaged community portion of the population, because you can't do that based on building or equivalent dwelling units.
Right, so they took that note and they're gonna have an internal discussion about different ways to calculate it using either per capita or EDU or other ways to calculate it, because our water rate's done per capita.
Yeah, and our Albany water rates, we have a higher rate in institutions like OGS and SUNY, they can actually bill at a higher rate, which the residences can bill at a lower rate. So,
I think that's a carryover from when you applied for hardship. And you used to do the old hardship applications. Years ago. They asked for EDUs. And Gahoes did the same thing. We backed into what an EDU was.
Yeah.
All right, and we told them, we're actually the same boat, we're metered.
Right.
Which the feds wanted even back in the 70s,
yeah,
which is the reason why we went to meters. So they said, no, we need an EDU. I said, okay, but it's gonna be fake. I'm backing into this number.
An estimate, Gary.
Yeah,
It's gonna be
no,
an estimate.
Estimate, not fake.
Just for the
Very,
people watching at home, it's an estimate.
well, the thing is, it's not that accurate.
Well, then that's what I see the EFC, said an EDU is based
All
on per
estimates are
unit.
inaccurate.
With all the construction, everything going on, to try to keep track of what single family, multifamily, 4-unit dwellings, what apartment complex went up, what was changed in the we have no
Exactly.
idea. We put a meter in and say, that's what we built to.
That's right.
I don't care who's living in there. I don't care what the water is used for. That's what we built it. So they're looking at that now.
yeah. So that's a little strange, but. Well, moving on to project updates.
There was one item that I added late, which we could table again, which is the reso for signers.
Oh,
Which is
well, we
item
should
5.
get Signature cards for Pioneer and Tom and I, so we can sign checks and discuss doing.
Yep. So the reso for the signatories names you, Tom, myself, and Amy. If you want to take action on it now, we can. Since it was presented late, I would understand if you want to table it.
I think it should be. Let's bring it up, let's table it again, but
Okay.
next time, but let's get to.
We can't get you signature cards unless we pass this resolution.
Do we want to discuss it? Because it was mentioned at the last meeting.
Yeah.
It wasn't on the agenda.
So right now, who is signatory right now?
I'm a signatory. Martin is a signatory. And Amy or Tom is a signatory. So this action would effectively take Martin off, retain Tom, add you, and add Amy.
I would propose that we don't add Amy, but you and Tom.
Okay. You want to amend the resolution? So can you pass Bill the packet there with the resolution? And I apologize for the late addition. So resolution 1 of 2023. As amended to remove Amy Weinstock. The signatories for the corporation through the accounts held at Pioneer Commercial Bank, Tom Dufresne, Mark Castiglione, and Bill Simcoe. And the edit is president is your title.
You're president.
And we'll get a clean copy of the revised reso for your signature.
Okay. You can do that quickly or get it.
Okay,
Good. So,
we need a,
we need a motion,
Motion as amended.
Chris,
I'll second.
Gary,
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Sorry about the late ad. I just didn't see it on the agenda and wanted to make sure you're able to get your signature cards.
There's nothing in the bylaws where it has to sit for 30 days or anything, right?
I don't believe so. Bill and I reviewed the bylaws a couple weeks ago. And this is how this conversation came up, because Bill, as the president, pointed out that he should have signatory authority for checks and to the accounts. So this is
And get
effectively,
Martin off.
and get Martin off.
Yeah. I think too.
So Bill, we're going to lunch.
I think too,
Hitting,
we have a
scratch that from the
some
record.
of our insurance, some of our insurance policies stuff has to do with whether the officers take off with the money, so we should don't do anything. Project updates, we finally have our odor control fiberglass tank being fabricated, seeing pictures of it being built. After John Keller Jr. made all kinds of threatening emails to Perry, the fiberglass company in Ohio building. Joint venture team was even considering whether Keller should just cast in place this tank, because they weren't seeing any progress going on. They built a form a couple of months ago and then started doing it with fiberglass and just this week, so. That's been the lagging thing. Right now, we're trying to figure out how they can finish up with the diversion at Delaware Avenue without necessarily having the odor control in place. I think that's going to be some of our discussion right now. I mean, we'd really prefer to have odor control before we're having some sewage come down through, but we're considering whether we might be able to use some of our bypass to Third Avenue and bypass facility bypass and screen off some areas, keep some doors closed and be able to start doing some diversion. And we can start making this. That because we're wanting to get finished. The current contract end dates are in September. And of course, September's come along. There's a lot of different prime contractors that have to finish up what they're doing. So that's mostly what we're doing. We're not doing too much yet on our last couple of projects with the CSO and the eliminations of a couple of regulators. Gary, how's your projects going?
They've come along. Columbia Street Phase 2, they're still out there working, doing restoration work and thank you. Working a little bit on the green infrastructure.
When do you think they'll be done
Yeah, I think that they'll be done by June, the end of June. We're still going back and forth on a couple of the items that are going to be in the new change order. So, ballpark figure is probably going to be like 100,000. The change order. Ballpark. But again, that number is can go up and down depending upon what some of the last items are. Because some of them involve credits besides actual work, and that's where the hang up is been. Trying to figure out what the original contract called for, what happened out in the field, how much is contract work, how much is all the easy stuff. But there's about 3 or 4 different items or so that you're talking substantial money as to what was contract and what is change order. So, but we're working through it. On Lee Street, Newcastle actually has been, the weather has helped a lot. And Newcastle is on schedule to complete the project according to contract.
So when's that end date you're in?
Final completion is like July 28th, substantial completion is the end of June. So. So far, we've been lucky.
Okay. And Van Buren Street, did they get that all sewed up with the contract signing and
Yeah,
everything?
contracts are signed. Just wait for start date. They're probably gonna start this fall.
They're gonna start in the fall.
Yeah, but this year, other half next spring and then paid next summer.
Okay, so we got some time before our first payment comes around.
Yeah.
Okay. So any other projects that we have? I guess that's about it, except that Gary's got a couple that are gonna be in preliminary engineering and Cross Street. I don't know if that involves much engineering or what you're doing there. That's a railroad crossing or?
Yeah, there's a railroad crossing with a pipe through. We just gotta get a line. Make sure it doesn't collapse under the railroad in the future.
Yeah.
It'd be wrong.
Okay, well, project updates, other business, I guess, I talked to Mark about a few things. One was to get what was originally our director's binder from 2015, just to kind of organize things. I think we talked about whether we would start using SharePoint instead of Dropbox, maybe for getting things between parties in this board. And I don't know.
So I chatted with Martin about getting the binder up on the web. He's got a clear idea about how to do that, so he's working on that. I also talked to him about the SharePoint. We're going to discontinue using the Dropbox, and as an interim step, just use the OneDrive links that we all have, and then work to build it into a SharePoint. The difference with OneDrive and SharePoint is that OneDrive, you can kind of share files, but SharePoint is a workspace. So it has a lot more functions, and Bill's thought was to make board meeting materials available to all the board members, and then the officers would have access to all the stuff. So SharePoint, we'd be able to create access controls to all the records of the corporation, but they would be accessible to members of the corporation outside of, this office.
So I guess another thing that's still in motion is signatures on the modification of the consent order. Is that? You know what that might stand?
I don't know where it stands. I know Martin was circulating the document for signatures, so I'll follow up with him on that.
Sent mine in this morning.
You got yours?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we sent it in. You should have, we had the mayor sign it and. That was before I went on vacation.
Okay. So you want to check with
Mhm.
Martin and see if that's if there's anything still has to be gathered. And then the other thing I was noticing from the manual, director's manual, was just that there's some different things to do in different months, and one of the things to do for this month would have been to review some policies and procedures. I know we kind of looked at that in other cases. That might be something if we're getting something about SharePoint for people just to soon take a look and see if we need to do anything. I guess the only reason I would think we'd need to do something if there was some state law change or something happening that we might need to make a change. I don't know if Mark, you're aware of anything within, there's harassment training and there's
Mhm.
various things that we do. There's some of the fiscal policies and other stuff. I wouldn't imagine that a lot of that changes, but if there's any way of just generally checking through the through the controller's office or whatever, in regard to what's expected of our kind of organization.
The last major thing in terms of policies and procedures was the sexual harassment policy. I haven't seen anything else of that significance come through the state. I know the state recently has been requiring, as a component of their grant applications, we don't do business with Russia form. But I don't think that dives into a policy.
Yeah. Well, if there's any tickler we need for anything that we filled out, so that, I know it really comes down to what to be submitted to terrorists when we do our terrorist reporting, so that whoever fills that out isn't tipping.
Is there harassment training every year?
Yes.
Is that something that I have my form from the city? That's something that you would.
Yeah, I think our policy just requires an attestation that you've had the training.
Okay.
Does the state not send a form out?
No.
Not anymore? Because you used to do it when you put online and they would send you a
Now it's more you get to do
certificate.
your own record, so if they come in to do an inspection, it's available.
Yeah.
Review.
Then it's not online. So technically, to be in compliance, it needs to be a live presentation. So somebody needs to be there giving the presentation.
Have them standing there and do it online.
Yes,
Post-COVID or?
I think it's still, you need somebody, the thought there is that somebody needs to be able to, in a position to answer questions about the agency's specific policies related to harassment and sexual harassment. But I would assume, since you guys all work for municipality, you have this training.
I still find it interesting that the governor that put that in is the one that got us.
Yes.
He didn't get the training, I guess. Yeah, if you want to see if there's anything we need to update. Mark, and if anybody's aware of anything from various policies. And anything else that we might need to do for ABO reporting. So that's mostly where we report whether we read all those policies. Anything else? We have a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion.
Gary, second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thanks, everybody.